All right, sir, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. I am Jeff Wilson. I am an open source developer at G Research Open Source Software. And today I want to introduce Pulp Manager. So, what is Pulp Manager? It's sort of a supervisory service to coordinate and facilitate sort of multi-instance pulp clusters, or multi-zone clusters, as the case may be. We recently open sourced this project, and it is under the Pulp organization on GitHub at that URL, and you can see that you can get that in the link to to this presentation in the schedule. So G Research, where I work, is a quantitative investment firm, and they do a lot of quant research and depend on a lot of open source software projects. And so there's a group inside of GR known as GROSS, GR Open Source Software, and we try to help contribute things that are developed in-house to the public, and also make contributions to existing projects that GR is using. So Pulp Manager was developed in-house, and it is used to coordinate the Pulp cluster that's currently running there. And Gross is kind of shepherding the public release of this project and also helping migrate the internal users from the the private in-house app to the open source app. Pulp Manager is a Python app, and it's pretty simple. It has an API server, a REST API server, one or more workers for running background tasks, a scheduler to feed tasks to the workers on a scheduled basis. And then if a few dependencies, Redis for the task queue, MariaDB for cluster state. It expects to use Vault or OpenDAO as the secret store for credentials to access the Pulp servers that it manages. And it depends on an external OIDC auth provider to authenticate users of the API. So these are the problems that Pulp Manager solves. I want to give a quick overview, and then I will dig into each one of these with a little more detail. First and foremost is it facilitates and encourages a kind of primary secondary configuration. So there'll be a single primary Pulp instance that is configured to use remotes from the public internet, and then the secondaries would be configured to only use the primary as their remote. And so they're mirrors essentially, but you can completely cut the secondaries off from the internet within this configuration. We are able to declare the repository layout via JSON files in a file system or in a Git repo. It can give you very fine-grained sync control, so we can have groups of repos that we sync frequently and others that we sync more occasionally. It does facilitate making snapshots with groups of repositories. And then finally, it gives you some centralized observability about the cluster, so the health of the servers, the health of all your repos on each server. So let me dig into those a little bit. The primary secondary configuration, it might be easiest to see that if we just look at the configuration file here. So hopefully you can see that on my screen. There's a configuration file where you define all the Pulp servers that it's going to be aware of, and you can see that you can schedule the repo configuration where it's grabbing those config files, and also the sync from upstream or sync from remote schedule for all the repos or groups of repos, as the case may be. The secondaries, you can see, have you can configure a pulp master attribute that tells it to replace anything that you know about the remote for this repository and just use the primary as your remote source. And down at the bottom part there, you can see that there are repo groups that are named, and they are configured by regex include and exclude. So repository definitions via folder or Git. This was mainly just to make it easy to get a repository defined on all of the Pulp servers that you're managing, just by dropping a JSON file in a folder. So I can show an example of that, I think, here. Let's see. So very straightforward, just a name, description, the remote URL, and other attributes. Oh, additionally, Pulp Manager does query the Pulp servers and reconciles its understanding of the repositories. So it will, if you create a repository out of band, it will still use that repository name for the repository group includes and excludes. Syncing, I think we kind of saw that you have repo syncs by group, and you can set different cron-like frequencies for the for this sync operations. So at GR we have internal packages that are sort of constantly under development, and we want those to be synced out to the secondaries continuously, more or less. And then the upstream packages are definitely more occasional, and probably are using snapshots, right? So we can vet the releases. You can configure concurrency as well. So like number of repos that will be syncing simultaneously on each Pulp server, the timeouts and that kind of thing. Snapshots use the same kind of regex include exclude patterns to define groups of repos that you want to snapshot, and you can either make them immutable or allow them to be updated so that you can have a kind of moving snapshot, like a nightly or a latest, that continues to, the same URL will get the latest. And then metrics here, it's essentially a Prometheus endpoint that can be used by a collector to get the state of all the Pulp servers, their health, their relative, and then the health of all the repos on each one of them. There are other tools that can do this job for sure, Ansible or Catello, and I think by all means, if those suit your configuration, that would be the way to go. Pulp Manager is very domain specific. It it defines these models that sort of are appropriate to a multi-instance Pulp configuration, and it's good for both configuration and operation of the cluster. So you get you can set up the repositories, but you can also monitor them, keep them synced, and that sort of thing. And we found it was good to have a kind of dedicated app for these jobs so that we're not sort of clogging up general purpose infrastructure. Okay, I'm going to show a quick demo. So our repo has a few make targets, and one of them is this demo target, which will run just a sort of Docker Compose setup that has all the components you need to see Pulp Manager in action. So Pulp Manager's components, as well as two instances of Pulp, a primary and a secondary. And it takes a few minutes to get it to run, so I will just skip ahead to the one that's already running here. And these are just some of the endpoints you can access on Pulp Manager to see what's going on. So a list of Pulp servers. This will show us all of the servers that it's aware of. So we see the Pulp primary and secondary here. The schedule for configuring the repositories, and let's see, there's a health roll up here. So we can see the secondary is green, the primary is red, and I can explain that in a second. But let's see. The reason for the primary being in a red state in this case is that the repositories on server 1 include an internal repository where we're kind of assuming that there is no remote href for it. It's just we're just uploading packages directly to the primary for these internal packages, and then the external one is in fact in a green sync health, and it is syncing from a true remote Nginx in this case. So this is the repository list on the second Pulp server. So we can see that the internal demo packages on this one are being fetched from the Pulp primary, and it has a sync health of green, and the external demo packages is also synced from the primary with a health of green. And let's see, I think I will show one other thing here, which is you can do an ad hoc sync task. And so I'm going to get the second Pulp server to sync from the first. It runs a background job, so we get a task ID of 112 here. And I can fetch the state of this. So there's a number of sort of stages that go into each sync task. We look at the repos on the primary and reconcile them with what's on the secondary, and then it will run parallel synchronizations for each repository. So that is in a 0 of 2 state on this repository sync, but let's see if it has updated. Okay, so now it is 2 of 2 complete. And then we go ahead and calculate the repo health and then roll up to the server health that things are A-okay here. And I was also going to show you the RQ dashboard view of these jobs, but this is a terminal-only presentation, so I will skip that. I do want to mention the sort of roadmap that we have in mind for this project. It's a little rough around the edges since it's recently extracted from G Research's very specific infrastructure and requirements. So trying to make it easier to use, better documentation, better portability to different environments. We want to migrate from, it has an internal module of a sort of homegrown Pulp bindings, and it would be good to migrate that to Pulp glue so that it'll sort of stay up to date as Pulp moves forward. There was some talk of a web UI since it's API only, and I think that would be a good direction to go in, as well as I like the idea that came up yesterday in Matthias's talk on Pulp UI, that maybe there's a way to sort of integrate some Pulp Manager data into that UI. And finally, we talked about log centralization. Pulp Manager does give you sort of roll up, health status centralization. But if one of the repo syncs is not succeeding, you would currently have to go find the logs for that Pulp instance and try to troubleshoot that way. But we could probably gather logs, especially for errors, into Pulp Manager and have a sort of single place to view what's going on. All right, I think that's all I have here. Does anybody have questions about Pulp Manager? Yes.
So first of all, I want to thank you, Jeffrey, for the work you've done in making this open source and making it work under the Pulp project. Outstanding, and I hope more people in the community can take advantage of it. One question I had is about your repo groups. You're basing that on a regex on the repo name, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Is that maybe something that you could think about taking advantage of Pulp labels for, because repositories allow labels?
Yeah, that would be great. I love that idea.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was like a technical reason for using name, or it was just, oh, right, labels could do that, which is fine.
Yeah, the technical reason is this software is a little old and it might not have it may predate labels.
Absolutely.
But I think that we'd probably want to it'd just be it would probably be some label duplication in the Pulp Manager database to sort of index those, and but that would certainly then be an attribute you could query by.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a good idea.
Cool.
I'll make an issue of that.
Outstanding.
So my
Dennis?
questions are not necessarily about Pulp Manager, but more about your setup. How long have you guys been using Pulp?
Let's see. I've been at G-Research for 3 years now, and I assume that they've been using it at least that long. This product only supports Pulp 3, but there was some documentation about how to get it to work with Pulp 2, if that helps to date it.
Okay, that's cool.
Scary.
And so how many, I saw that you have a primary and you have a replica. How many Pulps do you actually have?
That's a good question. I think we put one. GR probably has about 4 data centers, and there's probably 1 per data center.
That's
location. Cool. So 1 per zone, essentially, and a single primary.
And how often do you guys copy content from one to the other?
That's a good question. I would have to go look at the configuration there, but my presumption is that we're copying internal packages, almost continuously, like every 5 minutes, every 15 minutes. But then external packages would probably be more occasional and probably vetted before they're allowed to synchronize to the secondaries.
Interesting. So you're doing, the assumption that I'm hearing is whatever internal development is happening hits the primary and is immediately distributed to the data centers for use, but you're doing more vetting, more curation of whatever comes from outside the organization, whether it's RHEL or NVIDIA or whatever. You're actually checking on that, and then it gets synced down. Does that match your?
That's exactly right. G-Research is a very security first forward organization. So and so a lot of the data centers are in fact air gapped from the public internet entirely, and so the primary can sort of sit in a demilitarized zone and can see the public internet, but it's they want to control particularly for like supply chain security, control what's coming in.
Exactly right. Okay, cool.
Nice. So are you the primary developer on this tool?
I am not, actually. We have an internal development team that worked on it. I think there were maybe 2 or 3 developers that worked on it over time, And I came in to just to sort of move it into GitHub and to make refinements to. I have been sort of contributing PRs to it to try to get it more, less particular to the GR environment.
That's cool.
Is that Dennis?
And that was my son talking because he's home from school today.
Exactly right. He too has questions about Pulp Manager.
I get it. I get it. It raises questions.
Daniel, go ahead.
All right. So I have a question. So there is another user with kind of a similar profile to G Research. They're using Pulp. They're not using Pulp Manager. But they'll remain nameless. And one of the issues that they've been having, they're currently using the replica feature of Pulp. And one of the issues they're currently having is, and they have a similar kind of infrastructures. They have zones.
Mhm.
They have various zones. And basically, each zone does not always update at the same time with the way their infrastructure is currently working. So each of the zones are orchestrated such that it will pull down pull down content from the upstream repositories, but it's not all happening. Like it'll start the sync, but then when it finishes, it finishes, and there's not like a coordinated rollover from the old to the new, and they're having issues with that. So is that a problem that Pulp Manager can help solve?
I mean, it seems like in that case, if you don't need like continuous updates, like the snapshots would be a way to sort of have big bang releases all at once of the content, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pulp Manager would allow you to. I was looking at the snapshot feature. You would have to issue a command to each Pulp server to say take a snapshot. But because you would have because the secondaries can't sort of get their data, on their own, it's easier to keep them in sync that way. I guess that's the way to put it. That once the primary has a state of affairs that you like, then the secondaries can copy it. They may not get it at exactly the same time, but they should eventually be synchronized, right?
Yeah, it's the getting it at exactly the same time that's kind of their main issue. Basically, they want all their zones once everything has gotten updated. They want all the zones to roll over to the new versions at the exact same time.
Right.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Maybe that's just snapshotting, and you could have a scheduled snapshot that runs, off hours or something, so that you kind of move a label forward or a URL forward, so that the state of the snapshot is mostly the same. But it's almost impossible to guarantee simultaneous sameness.
Right. Short of like a kind of a CDN kind of setup, I guess. But thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Good question. We are at time, but we made Jeff start late. So if there's one more question, feel free. Okay. Jeffrey, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording here.